Pandemic Parenting. Today on Pandemic Parenting, we got a very special guest, one Joanne Holbrook. And Joanne is the author of Your Passport to Parenting, and she has a very unique experience in that she is a military wife. So she has had the opportunity to travel all across the United States and even to other countries. So along the way, she's picked up various parenting techniques, and she's coming on the show today to share all of those with you. And it's pretty special because I feel like most people, once they start raising a family, they tend to stay in one place for the most part, maybe a move or two. But Joanne's been all over and she's picked up a lot of interesting things. So she's coming on to share those, and I think it's going to be a really great episode. She also shares about positive parenting and how to create really great family relationships and a great family atmosphere. So you definitely don't want to miss that. And she's going to share a bunch of her own resources, including her website, where you can find out more. And as always, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, you can reach out to me at greg@thinkandEvolve.academy. Go check out my website, thinkandEvolve.academy. There's plenty of other resources on there. You can even take the quiz to see what your child's success accelerator is. And also, I've started posting more to my Instagram account finally. So if you want some funny parenting memes and some of my own ideas around education and educating your children and educating students, then check out my Instagram at think.and.evolve. So without further ado, let's get to Joanne.
All right, hello and welcome to Pandemic Parenting. I am your host, Greg Freeberry, and we have a very special guest with us today. We have Joanne Holbrook on the show today, and Joanne is a author, keynote speaker, and a parenting consultant. So Joanne, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Greg. How are you doing there?
Doing great. Yeah, I think you said you're in Hawaii, right?
I am.
So it's kind of early for you.
Yeah, not too early. We get up early here because we end up doing everything at the East Coast time or West Coast time. So we start early and finish early.
Well, yeah, it looks like you got a bunch of nice light going on in the background there. So it looks like a perfect morning.
It usually is.
All right, so I usually like to start off the show just asking you a few rapid fire personal questions so the audience can kind of get to know you. Is that all right with you?
Yeah. Let's do it.
All right, so first one is, what's your favorite food?
Ice cream.
Ice cream? A particular flavor, or you just like it all?
Anything Haagen-Dazs.
Anything Haagen-Dazs? Okay. That sounds pretty. I don't know if I could do an all ice cream diet, but it does.
I could, unfortunately.
Let's see. What would your perfect Saturday look like for you?
With as little as possible in it. Maybe a beach walk, and then maybe a sit outside and sip a cocktail, quiet.
There you go. I like it. I like the simple life as well.
Yeah.
Let's see. What's the most courageous thing you've ever
done? When I was 26, I gave up my life, my house, my job, my car, my cat, and I moved from South Africa to London with this one suitcase, no job, and a couch to sleep on for 2 nights.
Wow, that's incredible.
That was the bravest thing I've done.
Wow, that takes a lot of gusto for sure.
Yeah.
All right, amazing. And then lastly, do you have a favorite quote that you would like to share with everyone?
Yeah, I think Maya Angelou's quote that she says, when someone tells you who they are, believe them, really keeps me grounded a lot. Just makes it makes it easier to walk away from certain things, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So now I just wanted to ask you, since you shared that very courageous thing you did moving from South Africa, I know you're a very brave woman. So I wanted to ask you, as a military wife, you've been exposed to frequent moves and different cultures, and I was just wondering if you could share about your journey and how that has influenced you and your family.
Yeah. Well, I was a professional dancer in my youth, and then I started teaching in performing arts schools. Those are the jobs I gave up when I left. And then I decided that in South Africa, I wanted a bit more adventure. So I moved to London, and I performed there for a while until I got injured, and then that retired me fast. And then I started teaching, and then I got into producing. I worked in a theatre company in London as a producer for a few years. And then I met my husband, who is a US Army officer. He was stationed in Germany, and I then married him. We moved to Germany. We then moved to North Carolina. I then had a baby that changed everything for me. We then moved to Kansas, Washington State, back to the UK, Germany, Virginia, Australia, and now we're in Hawaii. And through that, yeah, and through that time, I had children. I had no support system. I had absolutely nothing. And I realized that every culture, even if it's in the US, West Coast, East Coast, a different culture. You have to learn how to adapt to be able to work in that culture. And that's where my journey began, on researching how others around the world parent and take all that goodness from them. And it's been amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's why I really wanted to have you on the show, because I think you have this very unique experience that not a lot of people experience, where, I think for the most part, people move maybe like a couple times in their life, but they typically just stay where they're at. But you're like all over the place. So that's really amazing. You've got to experience a lot of stuff. So yeah, so you've been traveling all over, and then like you said, you have to kind of learn different cultures, even within the United States. So you wrote this book, A Passport to Parenting, right? And so
your passport to parenting.
Yeah, your passport to parenting.
Yeah.
And so what really drove you to do that? Like, why did you decide that you had to write this book?
It was bubbling in me for years. I sort of started researching and interviewing women, men, cultures, everyone I could around the world. Even as we traveled, when you move in a country, we would sort of move there and travel around that area. So I managed to meet a lot of different kinds of people. So what I started doing was sharing these great ideas that were helping my life and helping me being a more positive, relaxed mom, from all this goodness that I was learning. And I started sharing it with friends and family, and eventually people started saying, you should write these stories down. You need to write these stories down. And I started writing them really just for my own keep. I had no idea that I would, be an author and that the book would do this well. But eventually I met someone who was a publishing coach, and he said that this is a unique story and we should go ahead and publish it. So he sort of, within a week, I was writing the book after he convinced me to do it. So, and it's been a whirlwind since then.
Wow. Okay. Amazing. And inside the book, you just share your stories about all the different cultures you've learned from as you travel around the world.
Yeah. And it's all from people that others don't get maybe the opportunity to meet. I like to think of it as I bring the village to you. My village was really huge. And, you meet unique people in the world that, if you live in a snow globe, you very much take advice from your mom, your parents, your best friend, your neighbor, and they also live in snow globes. So you're all in this little snow globe together, which is wonderful. And I really envy those kind of people, because I never had that. But when you allow someone else's good advice to come into your life and you go, what, that feels more authentic to the way I want to be a parent, the way I want to raise my children, you are allowed to bring that into your life. So that's what I share in the book. And so, I can give you an example of a story that I use. One of them is when I moved to the UK with a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, I had an amazing landlord. We lived on a farm, a dairy farm in the middle of Gloucester, and it was, black and white cows everywhere. We lived in a 200-year-old barn. It was just the quintessential in English experience. But my landlord was the special gift of this time. And she was a magistrate and a farmer's wife. And she had the most incredible relationship with her adult children. And we used to go for roasts on Sunday, as you do in the UK, at her house on this huge farm table. And her children were there, and they had something that I really wanted. And one day she came for tea, and I said to her, "How did you get there? What was it that you did in the early years that I can start implementing now so that we can get to that when they become adults, because they will be adults so much longer than children?" And she told me something that changed my life. She said she never lectured her kids. She said what she did was, if she wanted to make a point, she would find a story that went with that point. So if she was trying to teach them the story of don't do drugs, she didn't stand over them and go, "You will not do drugs, or I will da 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 da." Because all that happens is those children are like, they're backtracking out of the house. Yeah, like, "I don't want to hear what you have to say. This is uncomfortable. I'm leaving." So she said she would just make it like, "Hey, this kid came into the courtroom today and he had been selling drugs at school." And she didn't make it about the children at all. She made it about somebody else. And they were all involved. And because it's not on them or about them, they ask questions. And that's when she said, that's when you get this relationship where they can come to you and they can share things and they can ask you questions. And I think that was truly one of the best things I've ever been taught.
That's great. Yeah, because then it becomes more like a dialogue than just like a one-way communication. And I think that's a great point. And I also like to say, it's very commendable that you were like, "Wow, I see that this is something I want for my own children." You actually took the time to stop and ask and like, "Hey, how did you get your family to be like this?" I think a lot of people would maybe not even notice, or if they did notice, they'd be like, "Oh, that's really nice," and then just like go on about their lives. So I think that's really awesome that you actually took the time to be like, how can I create this in my own life?
Yeah, thank you.
Now it's time for the part of the show where I try to get you to think a little deeper. Hence, Deep Thoughts with Greg. So, narratives, stories. You heard Joanne mention how one of the parents she talked to never lectured her kids. Instead, she told them stories if she wanted to get a point across. Why? Well, if you think about it, stories are deeply ingrained in human existence and just in human history in general, right? So how do we entertain ourselves today? We watch movies, we watch shows, and what are those if nothing but just highly produced stories? Before we had television and internet as a medium, what did we use to tell stories before? Well, we had like the theater, we had books. So think about Aesop's Fables, right? So that is a book full of moral stories, and it has long lasting power. And even before we had written tradition, before we had books, before we had writing, we had an oral tradition. So we told each other stories. So all the cavemen sat around the campfire and talked about the hunt, and maybe some of the women went out and they talked about gathering the berries. And we know that we have these stories because we have cave paintings. So people made art about their stories. So stories are very, very powerful because they can communicate a message almost subconsciously, almost indirectly, right? So stories are very engaging. They're very fun, for one. So our brains really love stories. That's why we love shows. That's why we love movies. And well-produced stories can really communicate a powerful message. Sometimes even more powerful than just dictating, say, this is how it's going to be, right? So for one, stories are very fun. They're very engaging. Two, they just intuitively make sense to the human brain, right? Like I said, stories have been a part of human tradition, human history for as long as there's really been humans' ability to verbalize with one another, talk with one another, communicate. So stories make sense to us just like drinking water makes sense to us. It's almost like a necessity. So if you think about it, and even in your day-to-day, your brain is always creating narratives. It's always trying to create stories to make sense of everything that's going on around you. That's how we compute all this information that's constantly coming and bombarding us at every single second. So stories can be a powerful, powerful way for you to communicate with your kids. So just like Joanne mentioned, maybe instead of being like, oh, don't smoke cigarettes because they destroy your health and they cause cancer and they wear your skin down and this, that, and the other. Instead of just dictating it, perhaps you could just share a story about a friend or someone you know that smoked for the longest time and then they developed some sort of cancer and then maybe they died or became very sick. And so something like that can be way more powerful than just maybe standing on the soapbox and telling how it's supposed to be. Because especially with children, stories can create like almost a living, breathing image inside a person's mind, inside a child's mind, right? So it's malleable. You can interact with it when you're telling the story. You can think about it. There's dialogue there. So if you aren't adding stories to your parenting toolkit, maybe now is a great time. So think about, instead of just telling, sharing a story could be a magnificent way to really build a deeper relationship and teach lessons. All right, now let's get back to Joanne, who's going to share some more incredible parenting techniques that she's learned through her traveling experiences. So let's get back to it.
So yeah, so that was one great story. Are there any other like favorite parenting strategies that you picked up in some different states or different countries that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I have 110 stories in the book, or points. So, there's quite a lot. But I think, to show you what I mean by cultures can teach you things as well. When we moved to Germany, I was very in that mindset that a lot of parents are, that we have to be 110% there for our kids all the time. We have to be engaged, entertaining them. We have to be the one person in their life. I was very much that mom. And it wasn't really good for me because I was just not really, I wasn't doing my best, if you know what I mean. I was trying, but I was sort of struggling through. And when we moved to Germany, the way the Germans parent is so unique and beautiful. And what they do is they have very clear lines between parent time, kid time, and family time. So everything closes there at 5 o'clock every day, at 1 o'clock on Saturday, and everything's closed on Sunday. So it's very much dedicated family time. All there is to do is those times is to spend with your family. And then in the evenings after 5, there's no kids out. It's for adults to go out and have fun. It's for adults to go and hang out with their partners or with friends, but the children stay at home with the sitter or grandma or whatever the case is. And then they also send their children out without the parents so that they can get some resilience and some time by themselves to know that they can stand on their own 2 feet. And, if we would go skiing, which you do in Germany, because that's what you do. We would go and I'd be the mom who stands at the kids' slopes the whole day because I don't want to leave my kids. And the other parents would leave them with the instructor and go for the day. And the kids would have pacifiers in their mouths, skiing down with the instructor. Instructor would have them. Kids were super independent. And they knew that mom and dad would be back soon, and I'm going to do this, and mom and dad are going to do that together. And then in the evening, you will have dinner together. And it really taught me that you don't have to do it all. You are allowed to have time with your partner. You are allowed to go on your own. And you also, when you are together, to make it really good time. So.
Yeah, because I think a lot of times what can happen is if a parent's dedicating all their time to their kid and they don't give time for their partner or for themselves, they can start to become resentful, and then creates rifts between them and their children, and then they become more resentful, and it's kind of like a vicious circle. So I think taking
it does
to actually, take some time for yourself and for your partner, then you actually become a better parent, even though you're not spending 100% of your time with your kids.
No, and I think that was the biggest lesson that I learned from them for that. Even at Oktoberfest in the day, it was rides for the kids and oompa bands for the kids, and you'd go into the beer tent with the kids at 5 o'clock. The debauchery happened, and the kids were nowhere to be seen. So it was very clear, that was the way it was, and it was good because you'd had the time with the kids. Kids went away, and now it was your time, or the youngins came out and that kind of thing.
Okay. All right. So yeah, very clear divisions between kid time, family time, and parent time. I like that. Is there anything that you've discovered on your journey that seemed maybe counterintuitive to what you would expect, but you actually found to be very effective when you were parenting?
I think it was the German time. I think that was the time that it took me a while to get that understanding of what I was seeing and what I was feeling, because I did have that guilt if I left my kids. And I think that I did, for the first year there, I struggled to just let them go and let them, go. And once I did, I started pushing my children. So we'd go to the grocery store, and the bakery is always separate, and I would have a change purse, and I would send my 6-year-old into the bakery in a different language, different money. And I'd say to her, I want six of these breads, come out. And I would stand outside and I would test her, and I'd say, let's see how this whole German, way of doing things and making your kids do more works. And she would come out every time with the rolls, the change purse, the right change, and a bag of gummy bears because the ladies thought she was cute, and I started realizing that slowly, that we don't have to be guilty. We don't have to always talk for our children. We don't have to always do everything for them, and then we make them weaker by doing that.
Totally. Yeah, I 100% agree that if we coddle our kids, we're taking away those opportunities for them to grow and become more independent. And it reminds me of a story my mom used to tell me, like when she was younger, if she wanted to go to the mall, they would just like hop on the bus and just like go to the mall and hang out and then come home. And that was it. And like the parents were fine with that. Like my grandparents were fine with that. And then like nowadays it's like, you got to drop your kids off at the mall, and then they got to call you and text you every, hour to make sure they're okay. And then you got to come pick them up. And yeah, things are just like very, very different. It was like in my experience. So I thought it was kind of cool that like, yeah, I feel like maybe we lost that a little bit, where we just gave kids more independence and more responsibility.
Yeah, and I think it's a different world now as well. So parents are more fearful, and there's more negative stories shared. There was just with the 24/7 news, we have more shared, so it makes us more fearful. But there are moments that we can still take that back. Letting your child order for themselves in a restaurant. You often hear the mom going, she'll have this and she'll have that, and let them talk for themselves. In fact, my son wouldn't do it for years, and I was like, well, then you don't eat. And I would order, my daughter would order, my husband would order, and he would be like, I'm not talking. And I'd be like, okay, well, you're not eating. And sometimes being a little bit forceful with it, and then eventually he would be like, well, I want to have a meal too. And he would find his strength. But what happens is mom goes, okay, I'll do it for you. And it really does lose their voice. Mom will do it. Well, when they turn 19 and they're off to their life, that you can't do it for them. So you have to plan ahead. And most of my work that I do, I always say we parent with the end in mind. We don't parent day to day 6, 7, 8, 9-year-old. We parent our child as a 6-year-old with the end of a 19, 20, 21-year-old in our minds, so that they are equipped for as much as we can equip them for.
Okay. Yeah, I think that is a great strategy, because we want to create strong, resilient kids that can take responsibility and become independent in the future. So that's amazing advice.
So I really love this idea, this apparently German idea, of giving kids more independence and responsibility. And it's something I incorporate into my teaching style when I'm working with my students. So like when I ask them a math problem, what's the most common answer that they give me? Is I don't know, or I'm not sure. And I could just rush in and tell them the answer, right? And I could show them how to do it, and this is how you do it, and in hopes that, okay, they'll pick up the information, then they'll be able to do it next time. Well, that's really not the case. If they are like, I don't know, or I'm not sure, and then I just immediately show them how to do it, they're like, yeah, 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 and then they don't pay attention, and then the next time I have to save them again. I have to save them again. And all I'm doing is I'm teaching them that every time they say I don't know or I'm not sure, I'm just going to rush in and save the day for them and show them how to do it. So I usually make my students think. I go, all right, well, if you did know, what would you say? And then they'll get all, oh, he's going to make me work for it. But it's building in them to try and put an effort to find the answer themselves. And if they're not sure, then still try anyway. It's okay to guess or to fail as long as you find the answer eventually. So I use that in my teaching because I'm trying to, ideally, I want to build myself out of their lives. So if I'm doing my job appropriately as a tutor, I'm giving them the skills where they can learn everything on their own, and then they don't need me anymore. I'm building it so that they are self-sufficient, that they're independent. And I think that's a great way to parent as well. So just had to stop in there and say, it works in parenting and it works in teaching. So that's how my teaching style is too. So give kids more responsibility and they will become more responsible. And you might be shocked about how much responsibility a kid can really have. They seem like these helpless creatures sometimes, but I think if you give them a shot, see how much responsibility they're willing to take on and how much they can handle. And I think you'll really be surprised that maybe your kids can handle more responsibility than you think. All right, back to Joanne.
So I want to turn a little bit now. We're, as you well aware, we're in the middle of a pandemic right now. And so I'm just curious, how have you seen the pandemic most affecting the kids and families and parents that you work with on a daily basis?
I think parents are getting burnt out. They really are. They're trying their best. I really think that they are trying their best to make this as easy as possible for the kids. And also think it depends on the age of the kid. I think that if you have a really little kids, this is a really hard time because those little kids are used to being out and about, and that whole kindergarten age, it's such a fun time, and now they're told not to do that, and it's very stressful on the parents. I think the seniors in high school and all, and even first years in university, they're having an awful time because this is the time you want to go out and have fun and meet people, and so I think that the middle group, I think the parents are just trying to wait it out and see what they can do. So I'm going to fly in here. It's Hawaii. But I just think that there's a lot of anxiety from parents and burnout. And, like this week on Monday, we were told our kids are virtual schooling again. It's like you can never plan, you can never have it. And that's really hard on families right now. But I am a positive parenting consultant, and I do like to also show the other side of the coin. We know that there's negative stuff around. We are shown that daily, but not ignoring that, but also seeing how people's lives have changed, sometimes for the better. There's been more time with family. There's been parents have been able to see through the virtual schooling time how their kids actually act in class. There's a little bit more care towards teachers, which before it was very hard on teachers to be understood and how much they do. I think parents are starting to go, oh, okay, I need to support my teacher and not yell at them because they're not doing enough. So I think there are some things that we can draw that are positive. I think the other thing is that people want more simple lives with their families. They're not trying to go through those tick lists of all the things they have to give their kids before they leave the nest. They're seeing that the children actually just want to hang out, go on a walk, go on a hike, whatever the case is, that all that flashy stuff isn't really necessary. It's nice, but it maybe not be necessary.
Totally, yeah. And especially in these forced times where you have to simplify things and still learn how to have a good time with each other. So that's good. You just mentioned briefly positive parenting. Could you explain a little bit more about what that is and how you use it with your clients during the pandemic?
Yeah, well, I think that positive parenting has a bad rep because I think people think that you're this hippie and you always say nice things and you always end up every conversation with, oh, but you're doing your best and da 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 da. It's actually not. Positive parenting is where you try and put your kids in a situation where there is a positive end result. And I think that is the misconception there, but you're doing it in a positive way. You're not doing it through the lecturing or the yelling or all of that, but you are, pushing them into the store and making them buy the bread or making them talk or making them do things so that, because it's going to be good for them, that it's going to be beneficial, that there's going to be a positive outcome, maybe not this week or next year, but in 5 years' time. So that's really what I mean by positive parenting is really about the outcome of what you're doing now and how that will unfold.
Yeah, so it's more like just trying to focus on the positive, so in the future you can get a positive result.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And so I'm just curious, so these are pretty like challenging and tumultuous times, and we are getting bombarded with just negative news all the time, especially if you're addicted to the 24-hour news cycle, which I've detoxed myself of, but I know a lot of people still are. So like, what are some ways that parents can just kind of bring more calmness to their families, bring more positivity, and try and kind of block out that negativity bombardment?
I think that this is a wonderful time to start telling stories to your children. I think that, in the hustle and bustle of our pre-COVID life, I think I look at families then, I look at my own life, I look at friends and that. And I think that we were so busy. We had all these things we wanted to do and stories we wanted to tell, but now's the time to sit down and share and listen. Share and listen is what I would probably say, because, you could you bring generational stories into your conversations, tell your children about their family. These are things that we used to do back in the day before we had all this entertainment stuff, is that parents would share about their ancestors or their generations, and children love to hear that. They really love to hear where they came from, and this is a great opportunity to do that. When I was visiting in Edinburgh, I met a woman of a bed and breakfast that we stayed at. And as I do, I sat at coffee in the morning and asked her a million questions about raising children in Scotland. And she said that one of the things that she did that she is so proud of, her children were gone and out the house, is she used to tell them their story, their own story, how they were wanted, how they were, how it felt to be pregnant with them, how the birth story happened, how that first year was, because that child does not remember. You may remember, but you forget that child doesn't. And they hold on to that. And she said, she used to say that it was really giving them a place to start. It was giving them that, where did I begin? That's my starting block. And now I'm ready. And she said a lot of people forget this, that they need to hear how they came into this world, what was happening, who was around, what was said. So I do think that this is a great time to bring those stories of your child and their history into their lives right now.
Wow, I was just getting like a chill when you said that, because I was just thinking like, wow, I don't really know how I was when I was very young or what it was like. And it would be really awesome if my parents shared those kinds of stories with me. So now I feel like I got to go ask them.
And I highly recommend you do, because it's so bonding as well for a mom to share that with her children, because there was so much going on. She wasn't just sitting around doing nothing. There was emotions, there was situations, there was world events happening. And, what was that like? What were you worrying about? What were you feeling? Who was there? Who was the first person that ever saw me? What did they say? What was that like? And I think that is so nice to know, what was my beginning?
Absolutely. It reminds me of another little story about me. Like I, I did the whole like ancestry.com like DNA thing, and it was on a discount. And then, when you buy it, they like upsell you the ancestry.com. It was like $1 more to get access to ancestry. And I was like, okay, whatever, I'll spend $1. And then for like the next 3 weeks, I like disappeared. Like no one saw me because I was spending all my time like researching all these documents and like tracing my ancestors back to England. And I thought it was like so cool. So I think there is a lot of validity in what you say. Is like people love to learn about their ancestry, where they came from, and just like who they are. And I know you like I got addicted to it for a little while, and I built out the whole family tree. And then I actually got to share that with my parents and my family. So that was a cool gift that I could share them as well.
Yeah. And it's so nice. I mean, even here in Hawaii, they're very focused on children, and they do ceremonies to remember the story of the beginning of the child's life. In Africa, they have, a song that the mom sings to them in their stomach, so that they sing it the whole way through and it becomes their song. And there's so much around that time that we just overlook in the Western world. We just don't think about the fact that we forget about an entire phase in a child's life that is very important.
Yeah, so maybe I'll have a conversation with my parents today. Who knows?
I hope so.
So, as a matter of fact, I actually did have a conversation with my mom about what I was like as an infant and a child and what it was like raising me. And I was born in 1987, so it was like the Reagan era and the fall of the Berlin Wall, and the Soviet Union was dissolving. So there was a lot going on politically. And so I was just curious to learn more about like what my mom was feeling, what I was like, because I really don't remember anything before I was like 5 years old and 6 years old. And even then, like the memories are really hazy. So it actually was a really beautiful experience just sharing that with my mom. And she was telling me how I used to be mostly an agreeable kid, and like I was a happy kid, and I was actually really great with my sister from the very beginning, is what she said, because my sister was like 2.5 years younger than me. So I had a little baby sister when I was like 2.5. She said I like to hold my sister and play with her. But she said sometimes I would just like throw these tantrums and I would just like freak out. And she said one time she took me to the supermarket, and I don't know, I just wasn't having it for whatever reason. I started throwing a tantrum and I actually just laid down on the ground, like kicking and screaming and crying. And she was like absolutely mortified, and she wanted just to walk away and pretend like, oh, I don't even know whose kid that is. But she had to like try and soothe me and get me out of the supermarket because I was causing a scene. And she was like, all the parents, all the other people in this store probably thought I was like abusing you or something. And it's very interesting because she also said I had this like stubborn streak where sometimes if I just decided that like I didn't want to do something, then I just wouldn't do it. It's funny because like even today, I feel like my personality is largely the same in a lot of ways. Like I'm mostly agreeable, I'm pretty easygoing, I'm a pretty relaxed guy. But when there's like that one thing that I like put my foot down on, like I'm inflexible. Like there's just like no way I'm budging. I'm just like firm, and you just know it. So it was really cool just sharing that experience with my mom, and we talked for like 45 minutes to an hour just about what it was like raising me. And now I have those stories, and I know a little bit more about myself and what I was like when I was young. So I actually took Joanne's advice, and I highly recommend for all you parents out there, if your kids are old enough, really share those moments when they were really young, when they were babies or, toddlers, or even like 4 or 5 years old, because we really don't remember much from those very, very early years. And it's cool to hear about like what was going on, how she was experiencing, how, I like, it was good to hear about how my mom was experiencing life and what it was like for her and how it was raising me. So I got to learn more about myself, but I also got to learn about like what my mom's experience was being a parent of me. So definitely recommend try it out. Try it out. Share those stories. It can really strengthen the bond between you and your kids. All right, we're going to the final phase of the interview now. Joanne's going to share some resources, some additional resources that you can use to really implement all the ideas we talked about today. And she's going to talk about her own website and her Instagram and her book and all that really good stuff. So stick around if you want more resources, because Joanne's got a plethora of really good stuff.
All right, so yeah, you've been sharing just incredible advice. I was wondering if you have any additional resources, like are there any books or apps or websites that you can recommend for parents to get more information?
Yeah, well, I can recommend my own. My book is called Your Passport to Parenting. It's available on my website, which is yourpassporttoparenting.com, or on any bookshop, Barnes and Nobles. It's worldwide. It's an international book, and it's also on Audible, which is really nice. It's read by myself. And there's that, but I also do one-to-one parenting consulting. It's not coaching, it's consulting. And it's all about the parents. I always say I don't fix the behavioral issues of the kids, I fix the behavioral issues of the parents. So, it's really digging deep into what it is to be a parent. I also have courses that I run every second or third month of the year, and that's one-to-ones with me in a group setting. It's in a nice little container with parents from around the world, and it's really great to see how other parents around the world interact with each other. It's a really special space, these courses. And I have one coming up in February. It'll start on the 7th. And all you need to do to sign up for that is to contact me, and I send you some information. We have a little chat. We check first to see that it's right for you. And if it is, we sign you up and put you in the container. And yeah, I run them every 2 to 3 months.
Amazing. And if everyone wants to participate in any of Joanne's stuff, I'll put all the links to all those resources she just mentioned in the description, so you have easy access to all of it.
And I also put a lot of free content on my social media. I have, Instagram at Joanne Holbrook, and on Facebook at Your Passport to Parenting.
Okay, amazing. And that was going to be my final question is, if people wanted to find you, where could they find you? So you have Instagram, Facebook, and then your website.
Correct. Yeah. And on LinkedIn and all that. So I'm everywhere.
Yeah, I know.
You gotta
be everywhere nowadays, right?
I know you do.
Do you have any final thoughts or closing thoughts you'd like to share with all the parents out there before we let you go?
Yeah, just to remember that you are the only one who is qualified to be your child's parent, and that deserves a little bit of time and thought to how you want that to look. That ticking over day to day works for the day, but it doesn't work for the future. So, spending time and seeing how you can do your best with some extra help is always so valuable.
All right, well, that is amazing advice. Joanne, thank you so much for coming on Pandemic Parenting. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Greg.
All right, and hopefully we'll see you again soon.
Yes.
And finally, it's time for the wrap up recap. So what did we talk about with Joanne today? Well, let's see. We talked about stories. So not only do we talk about using stories as a way to convey lessons that you want your kids to learn, so kind of like an Aesop's fable kind of way. You want to teach them lessons, teach them morals, but also just those stories of bringing each other closer together. So like having a talk with your kids about what it was like raising them when they were very, very young, like I did with my mom, and now I feel closer to my mom. And those are stories that, heaven forbid my mom passed away and she never told me, those would have just gotten lost. And I would have never really known what it was like to have raised me and what I was like as a very young child. So stories are very important. Stories are an incredible means of communication between all humans, but also from parent to child. So what else did we talk about? We talked about positive parenting. And I love Joanne's take on this because like positive parenting, I think I'm always talking about like positive mindset, growth mindset and all that stuff. So a lot of times I can get mixed up with people thinking, oh, it's all just sunshine and rainbows and happy times. And no, it's not exactly that. It's trying to create a space so that a positive outcome can occur. So Joanne was talking about how when she was living in Germany and the Germans give a lot of responsibility and independence to their kids. She'd send her kid into the bakery with the change purse when she was just 6 years old and be like, all right, I want this and this and this. And then sure enough, her kid would come out with the correct change, everything she asked for, and even some candy from the store clerks that really liked her and thought she was really cute. So positive parenting is about putting your kids in a situation where you have a really positive outcome. And it's not necessarily tomorrow or next week or next month, but maybe years down the road when they're adults. How can you set up an environment right now to create positive outcomes when they're adults so that they're strong and independent and resilient and have strong character and all that good stuff? So we really learned a lot today. And definitely make sure you go out and check out Joanne's website. As you can see, she's an incredible, incredible personality and person. And she has some really unique experiences having traveled all over the world and all over the United States, learning a whole bunch of stuff along the way. So again, if you want to check her out, it's Your Passport. Oh, excuse me. It's yourpassporttoparenting.com. And once again, I would just like to thank you, the viewers, for watching Pandemic Parenting. I look forward to seeing you next week. Take it easy.